Jake Harrison stood in the huge crystal hall of the Zephyrian Palace. The ceiling stretched so high above him that he could barely see it. Strange blue lights danced across the walls, casting moving shadows everywhere. He had been to many alien worlds during his years as a commander, but this place still made him feel small. The alien nobles around him whispered in their musical language. Their tall, thin bodies moved like water, and their skin had a silver shine that caught the light. Jake could feel their eyes on him. Most of them had never seen a human up close before. Baron Vic still floated toward him on a platform made of the same crystal as the walls. The Baron was huge, even for his species. His body was covered in scales that shifted from blue to purple as he moved. 4 arms stretched from his torso, each ending in hands with too many fingers. His head was long and narrow, with 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows across his face. "Commander Harrison," the Baron said. His voice came from a small device on his chest that changed his words into English. "You humans talk so much about being strong. You say you can fix anything, solve any problem. You claim your species never gives up." Jake stayed silent. He had learned that interrupting alien nobles was a bad idea. The Baron's eyes all focused on him at once, which made Jake's skin crawl. "Today, I will test this famous human spirit," the Baron continued. A smile spread across his face, showing rows of sharp teeth. "I have a gift for you, Commander. Something that will show us all just how clever humans really are." A Baron waved one of his hands, and a section of the floor began to rise. On top of it was a clear pod filled with blue liquid. Inside the pod was a young woman. She was clearly Zephyrian, but different from the others Jake had seen. Her skin was pale white instead of silver, and her hair was long and silver like moonlight. She was beautiful in a way that made Jake's breath catch, but something was wrong. The woman's eyes were closed, and her body was perfectly still. Jake could see machines attached to her, keeping her alive. "This is my daughter, Lyra," the Baron said. His voice had no emotion in it at all. "She was once the pride of our house. Fast, strong, intelligent. She could fight better than most of our warriors. She was going to marry into the royal family." The Baron paused, and Jake saw something like sadness flicker across his face. But it was gone so quickly that Jake wondered if he had imagined it. "But that was before the accident," the Baron continued. "During the war with the Corvin rebels, she was leading a strike team. An enemy weapon hit her transport. The explosion damaged her spine. Now she cannot move her legs. She cannot walk. She cannot fight." Jake looked at the woman in the pod again. Even unconscious, she looked peaceful. But he could see the machines that were keeping her body working. "In our culture, Commander, the body is everything," the Baron sighed. "We value strength, speed, grace. A warrior who cannot walk is no warrior at all. A noble who cannot stand is no noble. My daughter is now worthless to my house." The other nobles made soft sounds of agreement. Jake felt anger building in his chest, but he kept his face calm. "So I give her to you," the Baron said, "and now his." Smile was cruel. "You humans claim you can overcome anything. You say you never give up on anyone. Prove it. Take my broken daughter and make her whole again." The Baron's laugh echoed through the hall. The other nobles joined in, their voices creating a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "Of course, I do not expect you to succeed," the Baron added. "Our best doctors have tried everything. Our most advanced technology cannot fix what was broken. But perhaps your human magic can work where our science has failed." Jake knew this was meant as an insult. The Baron was giving him an impossible task to make humans look foolish. When Jake failed to heal the woman, the Baron would point to it as proof that humans were not as special as they claimed. But as Jake looked at Lyra in her pod, he did not see a broken thing. He saw a person who needed help, He saw someone who had been thrown away by her own people, just because she was different. No. I accept, Jake said simply. The Baron's eyes widened with surprise. He had clearly expected Jake to refuse, or at least to ask for time to think about it. You accept? The Baron repeated. You understand what you are agreeing to? Yes. You will take responsibility for her. You will care for her. And when you fail to make her walk again, everyone will know that human pride is just empty words. I understand, Jake said. And I accept. The Baron was quiet for a long moment. Then his cruel smile returned. Very well, he said. Take her. Take my worthless daughter and try to make her useful again. I will be very interested to see what your human spirit can accomplish. Jake stepped forward and placed his hand on the pod. The liquid inside was warm, and he could see Lyra's chest, rising and falling slowly. Her name is Lyra, he said, looking directly at the Baron. And she is not worthless. The Baron's laugh followed Jake as he arranged for the pod to be moved to his ship. The other nobles whispered among themselves, already planning how they would spread the story of the human fool who thought he could work miracles. But Jake did not care what they thought. He had made a promise, and he would keep it. As his team carefully moved Lyra's pod toward the transport, Jake looked back at the Baron one last time. The alien noble was still smiling, sure that he had won. He thought he had given the humans a task that would destroy their reputation. He thought he had found a way to prove that humans were not special after all. The Baron had no idea what he had just done. He had no idea that his cruel joke would become something much more than he could ever imagine. 3 months had passed since Jake brought Lyra aboard the human research ship, Neptune's Pride. The ship was not as grand as the Zephyrian Palace, but it was home to some of the best doctors and scientists in human space. Jake had called in every favor. He had to get the right people for this mission. Dr. Alana Rodriguez worked in the medical bay every day from dawn until late at night. She was the best doctor Jake knew, and she had spent years studying alien biology. But Lyra was different from any patient she had ever treated. Her nervous system is incredible, Elena told Jake during one of their daily meetings. It works on frequencies that our brains cannot even imagine. The way her thoughts move through her body is like watching lightning dance through crystal. Elena had been studying Lyra while she slept in her pod. The Zephyrian woman's body was healing slowly, but the damage to her spine was permanent. The weapon that had hit her transport had destroyed the nerves that controlled her legs. No human medicine could fix that kind of damage, but Elena was not giving up. She had an idea that might work, but it was dangerous and had never been tried before. 2 weeks ago, they had woken Lyra from her long sleep. Jake had been there when she opened her eyes for the first time. Her eyes were the most beautiful color he had ever seen, like purple flowers mixed with starlight. At first, Lyra had been confused and afraid. She spoke in her own language, calling out for her father and her home. But slowly, she remembered what had happened. She remembered the battle, the explosion, and the way her father had looked at her when the doctors told him she would never walk again. "Why am I here?" she had asked Jake in perfect English. Her voice was soft and musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Because you needed help," Jake had answered. "And because we do not leave people behind." Lyra had been quiet for a long time after that. She stared at the ceiling of the medical bay, and Jake could see tears running down her face. "You do not understand," she finally said. "In my culture, I am already dead. A warrior who cannot fight is nothing. A noble who cannot stand is worse than nothing. My father was right to give me away." Jake had wanted to argue with her, to tell her that her worth was not measured by her ability to walk. But he could see that she was in pain, and not just physical pain. Her whole world had been built around ideas of strength and perfection. Now she felt like she had lost everything that made her who she was. Every day, Jake visited her in the medical bay. He brought her books about human history and culture. He played music for her from Earth. He told her stories about people who had overcome great challenges. "Your people are strange," Lyra said one day as Jake read to her about a human who had climbed the highest mountain on Earth with no legs. "Why do you care so much about those who are broken?" "Because we do not see them as broken," Jake answered. "We see them as people who need help, and we believe that everyone has value, no matter what they can or cannot do." Lyra was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "On my world, the weak are left to die. Only the strong survive. Only the perfect are allowed to lead." "That sounds like a lonely way to live," Jake said. "It is," Lyra admitted. "But it is the only way I have ever known." As the weeks passed, Lyra began to change. She started asking questions about human culture and history. She wanted to know how humans had survived on their harsh world. She was amazed by stories of humans who had lived through disasters, who had built great cities, who had reached for the stars. "You came from such a dangerous world," she said one day. "Ice ages, storms, earthquakes, diseases. How did you survive?" "We helped each other," Jake said. "When one person fell, others helped them up. When one community was in trouble, others came to help. We learned that we are stronger together than we are alone." Lyra touched the books Jake had brought her. Her fingers traced the words on the pages as if they were precious jewels. "My people have forgotten this," she said. "We have become so focused on individual perfection that we have forgotten about compassion." Dr. Rodriguez had been watching Lyra carefully. The young woman was healing emotionally as well as physically. She was starting to smile sometimes, and she had even laughed at one of Jake's jokes. "She is ready," Elena told Jake one evening. "Ready for what we have planned." Elena had been working on something special. With the help of Lieutenant Alex Chun, a brilliant engineer, she had designed a new kind of treatment. It was not just about healing Lyra's body. It was about giving her something even better than what she had lost. "We cannot fix her spine," Elena explained to Jake, "but we can go around it. We can create a new pathway for her thoughts to control her body." The device Elena had created looked like a crown made of silver wires and tiny lights. It was beautiful and delicate, like jewelry made for a queen. "It will connect directly to her brain," Elena said. "It will read her thoughts and translate them into movement. But it is more than that. It will connect her to our computer systems, to our databases, to our communication networks." Jake looked at the device with wonder. "You are talking about making her part of the ship itself?" "In a way, yes," Elena said. "She will be able to control things with her mind. She will be able to access information instantly. She will be able to communicate with our computers as if they were part of her own thoughts." It was dangerous. No one had ever tried to connect an alien brain to human technology before. They did not know if it would work or if it might hurt Lyra. But when Elena explained the plan to Lyra, the young woman's eyes lit up with hope for the first time since she had arrived. "You would do this for me?" Lyra asked. "You would risk everything to help someone who is not even human?" "Of course," Elena said. "That is what we do." The day of the procedure, Jake held Lyra's hand as Elena prepared the neural crown. Lyra was scared, but she was also excited. For the first time in months, she felt like she might have a future. "Whatever happens," she said to Jake, "thank you for showing me that there is another way to live." Elena placed the crown on Lyra's head. The silver wires seemed to merge with her silver hair, and the tiny lights began to glow softly. Lyra's eyes closed, and for a moment, everything was quiet. Then her eyes opened, and they were filled with starlight. "I can feel everything," she whispered. "The ship, the computers, the stars themselves. It is like I am part of something much bigger than myself." Elena helped Lyra sit up. The young woman moved carefully, testing her new connection to the neural crown. Then slowly she began to stand. Her legs moved smoothly, gracefully, as if she had never been injured at all. But Jake could see that this was different from before. This was better. Lyra moved like she was dancing with the universe itself. "How do you feel?" Elena asked. Lyra smiled, and her whole face glowed with joy. "I feel like I am finally alive." The first week after Lyra's transformation was filled with wonder and discovery. She spent hours learning to use her new abilities, and each day brought new surprises. Dr. Rodriguez and Lieutenant Chun watched in amazement as Lyra did things they had never imagined possible. "Look at this," Elena said to Jake as they watched Lyra in the lab. The young woman was standing perfectly still, but her eyes were glowing with soft blue light. Around her, 3 different computer screens showed complex data streams that were updating faster than any human could read. "She is processing information from our navigation system, our weapons array, and our communications hub, all at the same time," Elena explained. "And she is doing it as easily as we breathe." Jake watched as Lyra raised her hand, and the lights in the room dimmed to exactly the level she wanted. She had not touched anything. She had simply thought about what she wanted, and the ship had obeyed. "The connection is stronger than we expected," Lieutenant Chun said. He was a quiet man who usually worked alone, but Lyra's case had fascinated him. "She is not just using our technology. She is becoming part of it." Lyra turned to them, and Jake could see that her eyes were different now. They still held the same kindness he had seen before, but now they also held depths that seemed to go on forever. "I can feel the ship's heartbeat," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "I can sense every system, every circuit, every piece of data flowing through the network. It is like having 1,000 new senses all at once." Captain Ryan Murphy, the ship's commander, had been watching these developments with growing excitement. He was a practical man who cared more about results than theories, and the results were incredible. "Show him the navigation test," Elena said to Lyra. Lyra nodded and walked to the navigation console. She did not touch the controls. Instead, she placed her hands flat on the surface and closed her eyes. A neural crown on her head began to glow brighter, and suddenly the main screen filled with star charts. "Where would you like to go, Captain?" Lyra asked. "The Kepler system," Murphy said. "It is 3 days away at maximum speed." Lyra's eyes opened, and she smiled. "I can plot a course that will get us there in 18 hours. Murphy looked at the route she had calculated. It used gravitational slingshots around 4 different stars, and took advantage of solar wind patterns that changed every few minutes. It was the kind of course that would take a team of navigators hours to plan, and Lyra had done it in seconds. "That is impossible," Murphy said. "The calculations alone would take our computers an hour to verify." "I am not just calculating," Lyra explained. "I am feeling the paths through space. I can sense the gravity wells, the energy flows, the safe passages between the stars. It is like reading a map that is written in the fabric of space itself." Over the next few days, Lyra's abilities continued to grow. She could control any system on the ship with a thought. She could communicate with the artificial intelligence that ran the ship's basic functions. She could process sensor data so quickly that she could predict asteroid movements hours in advance. But the most amazing thing was how she could connect with other people. When she touched Jake's hand, he could feel her thoughts mixing with his own. It was not invasive or frightening. It was like having a conversation without words. "I can share what I am experiencing," she told him during one of these connections. "I can show you how I see the universe now." Through her touch, Jake could feel the vast network of energy that connected all things. He could sense the ship around them as a living thing, with its own patterns and rhythms. He could feel the stars, calling to them across the empty space. "It is beautiful," he said when she let go of his hand. "It is everything," Lyra replied. "I never understood how small my world was before. My people see only what is in front of them, but now I can see the connections between all things." Dr. Rodriguez had been studying Lyra's brain activity during these demonstrations. What she found was extraordinary. Her brain is not just using the neural crown, Elena explained to the senior officers. It is adapting to work with it. New neural pathways are forming. Her thoughts are becoming faster, more complex, more connected. Is it dangerous? Captain Murphy asked. "We do not know," Elena admitted. "This has never been done before, but Lyra shows no signs of distress. In fact, she seems healthier and happier than she has ever been." Jake had been spending more time with Lyra, helping her understand her new abilities. He had watched her grow from a broken, hopeless woman into something extraordinary. But he was also worried about what this meant for her future. "Do you miss being fully Zephyrian?" he asked her one day as they sat in the observation deck, watching the stars. Lyra was quiet for a long time. Her hand rested on the ship's control panel, and Jake could see data flowing across the screens as she unconsciously monitored the ship's systems. "I miss the simplicity," she finally said. "Before, I knew who I was and what was expected of me. Now, I am something new, something that has never existed before." "Are you afraid?" Jake asked. "Sometimes," Lyra admitted. "But I am also excited. I can see possibilities that I never imagined. I can feel the potential for growth, for change, for something better." She turned to look at him, and Jake could see starlight dancing in her eyes. "Your people gave me something my own people never could," she said. "They gave me hope. They showed me that being different does not mean being worthless." As the days passed, word of Lyra's transformation began to spread. Other ships in the human fleet requested permission to study her case. Scientists from across human space wanted to understand how the neural crown worked, but Jake was worried about something else. He knew that news of Lyra's abilities would eventually reach Zephyrian space. He knew that Baron Vexthal would hear about what had happened to his daughter. "He will demand that I return," Lyra said when Jake shared his concerns. "He will want to study me, to understand how I was changed. He will want to use me as a weapon." "We will not let that happen," Jake promised. Lyra smiled sadly. "You may not have a choice. I am still his daughter by Zephyrian law, and now that I am valuable again, he will want me back." Jake looked at this woman who had become so much more than anyone had imagined. She was no longer just Zephyrian or human. She was something new, something that bridged the gap between organic life and artificial intelligence. "Then we will face that problem when it comes," he said, "together." Lyra nodded, and Jake could feel her thoughts touching his mind. She was scared, but she was also determined. She had found her place in the universe, and she would not let anyone take it away from her dot as they sat watching the stars. Jake realized that Baron Vexthal's cruel joke had created something the galaxy had never seen before. The Baron had thought he was giving the humans an impossible task. Instead, he had given them the key to a new kind of existence. The broken daughter he had thrown away had become something legendary. The message from Baron Vexthal arrived on a cold morning when the ship was traveling between star systems. Captain Murphy brought the recording to Jake's quarters, and his face was grim. "You need to see this," Murphy said, activating the holographic display. The Baron's image appeared in the center of the room, larger than life and filled with rage. His forearms moved wildly as he spoke, and his 6 eyes blazed with fury. Commander Harrison, the Baron's voice boomed through the translation device. I have heard impossible stories about my daughter, tales of miracles and transformations. That cannot be true. My spies tell me that she walks again, that she has become something more than she was before. The Baron leaned forward, his face filling the display. I do not believe these lies. I gave you a broken thing, and broken things cannot be fixed. You are playing games with me, human. You are trying to make me look foolish. Jake watched as the Baron's expression changed from anger to cold determination. I demand proof, the Baron continued. I challenge you to bring my daughter before the High Council of Zephyria. Let her face the traditional tests of worthiness. Let her prove that she is truly whole again, not just some puppet filled with your human tricks. The message ended, and the room fell silent. Jake looked at Murphy, who shook his head sadly. It is a trap, Murphy said. He knows we cannot refuse. A formal challenge. If we do, it will be seen as an admission that we have been lying about Lyra's recovery. Jake nodded. He had expected this day to come, but he had hoped they would have more time to prepare. What are these tests? Jake asked. I looked them up. Murphy replied. 3 challenges that test intelligence, physical ability, and combat skills. They are designed to prove that a person is worthy of their noble rank. Jake thought about Lyra and her new abilities. She was certainly intelligent enough to pass any test, but combat skills? That was something they had not explored yet. He found Lyra in the engineering section, her hands resting on the ship's main computer core. Her eyes were closed, and she was smiling peacefully. Jake could see data streaming across the screens around her as she communicated with the ship's systems. I heard the message, she said without opening her eyes. I felt it through the ship's communication system as it arrived. What do you want to do? Jake asked. Lyra opened her eyes and looked at him. There was no fear in her gaze, only determination. I want to face him, she said. I want to show him what his cruelty created. It could be dangerous, Jake warned. Your father is not just angry. He is desperate. A noble who loses face in front of the High Council can lose everything. I know, Lyra replied, but I will not hide from what I have become. I will not let him pretend that I am still the broken thing he threw away. 3 days later, they arrived at the Great Assembly, a massive space station that served as the capital of the Zephyrian Empire. The station was shaped like a crystal, flower with petals that stretched out into space. Each petal contained different government offices and living quarters for the nobility as their ship docked. Jake could see other vessels arriving from across the galaxy. Word of the challenge had spread, and beings from dozens of different species had come to witness the event. This is bigger than we expected, Dr. Rodriguez said as they walked through the station's corridors. Half the galaxy seems to be here. Lyra walked beside them, her neural crown glowing softly beneath her silver hair. She had chosen to wear a simple blue dress that Jake had brought her from Earth, rather than the elaborate robes of Zephyrian nobility. She looked calm and confident, but Jake could sense the tension in her movements. The great assembly hall was enormous, with a domed ceiling that showed images of the stars. Thousands of beings filled the seats, their voices creating a constant buzz of conversation. At the center of the hall was a circular platform where the tests would take place. Baron Vexthal waited on the platform, surrounded by his advisors and guards. He looked older than Jake remembered, and there was something desperate in his eyes. When he saw Lyra, his face went through a series of expressions: surprise, hope, and then suspicion. Daughter, he said in the Zephyrian language. Father, Lyra replied in the same language, but her voice was cold and distant. The Baron stared at her for a long moment. Jake could see that he was trying to understand what he was looking at. Lyra stood straight and tall, moving with grace. and confidence. But there was something different about her, something that made her seem both familiar and alien at the same time. "You look well," the Baron said finally. "I am well," Lyra replied, "better than I have ever been." High Chancellor Morphic, the leader of the Zephyrian government, stepped forward to explain the rules of the challenge. He was an ancient being, so old that his skin had turned completely silver, and his eyes had become milky white. "The tests are simple," he announced, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. "First, the test of intelligence. A challenger must solve a quantum puzzle that has never been solved before. Second, the test of physical ability. The challenger must navigate a course that changes based on their own movements. Third, the test of combat. The challenger must face 3 opponents chosen by the council." The Chancellor looked at Lyra with curious eyes. These tests were designed for pure-blood Zephyrians in perfect physical condition. "Are you certain you wish to attempt them?" "I am certain," Lyra said. The first test began immediately. A holographic puzzle appeared in the air above the platform. It was a complex 3-dimensional shape that seemed to shift and change as Jake watched it. The puzzle was made of quantum energy, which meant it existed in multiple states at the same time. "This puzzle has been unsolved for 300 years, the Chancellor explained. "Many of our greatest minds have tried to unlock its secrets." Lyra stepped forward and raised her hands toward the puzzle. The neural crown on her head began to glow brighter, and Jake could see her eyes filling with starlight. For a moment, nothing happened. Then suddenly, the puzzle began to change. The shifting patterns became stable, the chaotic energy became organized, and the impossible shape resolved into something beautiful and symmetrical. The hall erupted in shocked whispers. The Chancellor stared at the solved puzzle with disbelief. "How did you do that?" he asked. "I did not solve it," Lyra explained. "I understood it. The puzzle was not meant to be solved by logic alone. It required intuition, the ability to see patterns that exist outside normal space and time." The second test was even more impressive. The navigation course appeared around Lyra, a maze of floating platforms and energy barriers that moved in response to her presence. Most beings would have needed hours to map out the changing pathways. Lyra moved through the course like she was dancing. She seemed to know where each platform would be before it appeared, where each barrier would open before it moved. She completed the course in minutes, moving with such grace that it looked effortless. "Impossible," Baron Vexthal whispered. "No one moves that fast." "She is not just moving fast," Jake realized. "She is predicting the course's movements. She can see the patterns in the chaos." The third test was the one Jake had been most worried about. 3 Zephyrian warriors stepped onto the platform, each one armed with traditional energy weapons. They were skilled fighters, chosen specifically to challenge Lyra. But as they attacked, something extraordinary happened. Lyra did not fight them in the traditional way. Instead, she seemed to anticipate their every move. She dodged attacks that should have been impossible to avoid, countered strikes before they were fully committed, and moved with a fluidity that was almost supernatural. "She is not just fighting them," Dr. Rodriguez whispered to Jake. "She is reading their thoughts, predicting their actions through micro-expressions and body language. The neural crown is processing information faster than they can act." Within minutes, all 3 warriors were defeated. They lay on the platform, not seriously hurt, but clearly beaten. Lyra stood in the center of the platform, not even breathing hard. The hall was completely silent. No one had ever seen anything like what they had just witnessed. Baron Vexthal stepped forward, his face pale with shock. "What have you become?" he asked his daughter. Lyra looked at him with eyes that held the wisdom of stars. "I have become what you made me," she said. "When you threw me away, you forced me to find a new way to exist. The humans did not just fix what was broken. They helped me become something better. The Baron stared at his daughter, and Jake could see the realization dawning in his eyes. He had thought he was giving the humans an impossible task. Instead, he had given them the opportunity to create something extraordinary. "I am no longer just your daughter," Lara continued. "I am no longer just Zephyrian. I am something new, something that bridges the gap between organic life and artificial intelligence. I am the first of my kind, but I will not be the last." The Baron's face crumpled, and for the first time, Jake saw real emotion in his eyes. It was not anger or pride. It was grief for what he had lost through his own cruelty. "I was wrong," the Baron whispered. "I was so wrong." The great assembly hall remained silent for long minutes after Lyra's victory. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had just witnessed. The tests that had challenged Zephyrian nobles for centuries had been completed with an ease that seemed impossible. High Chancellor Morthic was the first to speak. His ancient voice carried across the hall as he addressed Lyra directly. "In 300 years of governing this council, I have never seen anything like what you have accomplished today," he said. "But I sense that these tests were not the limit of your abilities. There is something more, something that you have not yet shown us." Lyra nodded slowly. "There is one more test that I would like to attempt," she said. "The connection with the Eternal Watcher." A gasp ran through the assembled crowd. The Eternal Watcher was the ancient artificial intelligence that had guided the Zephyrian Empire for over 1,000 years. It contained the accumulated knowledge of their entire civilization, but it was also dangerous. Many beings had tried to connect with it directly, and most had died from the mental strain. "That is not a test," Baron Vexthal said, his voice filled with panic. "That is suicide. The Eternal Watcher has never allowed an organic mind to merge with its consciousness." "I am not entirely organic anymore," Lyra replied calmly, "and I believe the Watcher has been waiting for someone like me." The Chancellor looked uncertain. "The risk is enormous," he said. "If you fail, the mental feedback could kill you. It could also damage the Watcher itself." "I understand the risk," Lyra said. "But I also understand the potential. The Watcher has been alone for centuries, processing information without true understanding. I can give it something it has never had: intuition, creativity, the ability to see beyond pure logic." Jake wanted to object, to tell her not to take such a dangerous risk. But he could see in her eyes that she had already made her decision. This was not just about proving her abilities. This was about fulfilling her destiny. The connection chamber was deep in the heart of the space station, surrounded by layers of protection and security. The Eternal Watcher's physical form was a massive crystal structure that pulsed with blue light. Cables and energy conduits stretched from it in all directions, connecting it to every system in the station dot as they entered the chamber. Jake could feel the weight of the artificial intelligence's attention. It was like standing in the presence of a god, something vast and ancient and utterly alien. "I have been watching you, hybrid child," the Watcher's voice echoed through the chamber. It spoke in pure Zephyrian, but somehow Jake could understand every word. "You are something new, something that should not exist according to the laws of nature." "I exist because the universe needed me to exist," Lara replied. "I am the bridge between what was and what could be." Lara stepped forward and placed her hands on the crystal surface of the Eternal Watcher. The neural crown on her head blazed with light, and suddenly the entire chamber filled with energy. Jake watched in amazement as streams of data began flowing between Lyra and the ancient AI. But this was different from her previous connections with human technology. This was a true joining of minds, a merging of organic intuition and artificial logic. "I can see everything," Lyra whispered, her voice filled with wonder. The history of the galaxy, the patterns of war and peace, the rise and fall of civilizations. But I can also see something else, something terrible approaching. The images began appearing on screens throughout the chamber. Ships unlike anything Jake had ever seen, dark and twisted things that seemed to eat light itself. They moved through space in formations that hurt to look at, leaving nothing but emptiness behind them. The Void Hunters, the Eternal Watchers. Voice had changed, becoming deeper and more urgent. The ancient enemy that drove our ancestors to these stars. They have been waiting in the space between galaxies, growing stronger, preparing to return. Lyra's eyes opened, and Jake could see galaxies spinning in their depths. They will arrive in 7 years, she said. Hundreds of thousands of ships, armed with weapons that can destroy entire star systems. No single species can stand against them. The Baron stepped forward, his face pale with fear. How can you know this? Because I can see the patterns they leave in space-time itself, Lyra explained. Their approach creates ripples that the Eternal Watcher has been detecting for decades, but it could not understand what they meant. Together, we can read the signs. High Chancellor Morthic looked at the terrifying images on the screens. What can we do? How can we prepare for something like this? Lyra turned to face the assembled leaders, and when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who had seen the future itself. We must unite, she said. All species, all governments, all peoples. The Void Hunters do not distinguish between Zephyrian and human, between noble and commoner. They see only life to be consumed. Over the following hours, Lyra shared everything. She had learned from her connection with the Eternal Watcher. She showed them the Void Hunters' weaknesses, their patterns of attack, the technologies that might be used to fight them. But most importantly, she showed them something else, a vision of what could be achieved if the galaxy's peoples worked together. I am not the only one who can be enhanced, she explained. The neural crown technology can be adapted for other species. We can create a network of enhanced beings, each one contributing their unique abilities to our common defense. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward, her eyes bright with possibility. A collective intelligence, she said. Beings who can think and react faster than any normal mind, connected across vast distances, sharing information instantly. It will not be easy, Lyra warned. The process is dangerous, and not everyone will survive it. But for those who do, it will mean becoming something more than they were before. Baron Vexthal looked at his daughter with new understanding. This is why you were given to the humans, he said quietly. Not as punishment, but as preparation. You were meant to become the first of a new kind of being. Lyra smiled sadly at her father. Your cruelty became kindness without your knowledge, she said. Your attempt to mock the humans became the salvation of the galaxy. In the days that followed, word of Lyra's revelation spread across known space. Representatives from hundreds of worlds came to the Great Assembly to hear her speak. Many were skeptical at first, but when Lyra showed them the evidence, when she let them see through her enhanced senses, they began to believe. Jake watched as his friend became something more than just a person. She became a symbol, a leader, a bridge between the old ways and the new. Beings who had been enemies for generations began working together, united by the threat that only she could fully perceive. The first volunteers for enhancement came from the most unlikely places. Warriors who had lost limbs in battle, scientists whose minds had been damaged by radiation, explorers who had been crippled in accidents. Each one was transformed by the neural crown technology, becoming something greater than they had been. Before as the months passed, Jake found himself commanding not just a ship, but an entire fleet. Dozens of vessels from different species, all working together under Lyra's guidance. The enhanced beings formed a communication network that spanned the galaxy, sharing information and coordinating defenses. "We are ready," Lyra told Jake one day as they stood on the bridge of their new flagship. Around them, the enhanced crew worked with perfect coordination, their minds linked in ways that still amazed him. "Ready for what?" Jake asked. "To become legends," Lyra replied, her eyes shining with starlight. "To show the universe that even the greatest darkness cannot overcome the light of cooperation and hope." 5 years had passed since Baron Vex Thul had mockingly given his broken daughter to a human commander. Now, that same daughter stood at the head of the largest alliance in galactic history. The neural crown on her head had evolved, becoming something that was part technology and part living tissue. She was no longer fully organic or fully artificial. She was something entirely new. The Baron himself had volunteered for enhancement, seeking to atone for his past cruelty by dedicating his life to the defense of the galaxy. The process had been difficult for him, but he had survived, becoming one of Lyra's most trusted advisors. "I threw away a treasure," he told Jake one day. "I discarded the most precious thing in my life because I could not see past my own pride. But the humans saw what I could not, potential where I saw only failure." As the Void Hunters drew closer, the enhanced beings continued their preparations. They built new weapons, developed new strategies, and most importantly, they created bonds of trust and friendship that transcended species barriers. Lyra had become exactly what Baron Vex Thul had never intended, a legend. But not the kind of legend he would have understood. She was not known for conquest or wealth or power. She was known for something far more precious, for showing the galaxy that strength came not from perfection, but from the willingness to help others become their best selves. The girl who had been cast aside as worthless had become the most important person in the galaxy. The cruel joke had become a beacon of hope. And when the darkness finally came, they would be ready to meet it not as separate species fighting alone, but as one people united in purpose and strengthened by the knowledge they